Well, Jim, great to have you here. It's been a long time in the making.
Indeed, thank you very much, Ned. I know that Ida's been chasing me for over a year now to come up, and delighted to be here.
Yeah, great to finally have you here. So, yeah, it's been a while since we've met, and we'll get into the career path a little bit more. But before we get started, I think it'd be very useful for you to just do a bit of an intro about yourself, because I believe you're a very credible individual when it comes to technology and this vertical as well. So
my name is Jim O'Donnell. I'm the Executive Director of IT and Digital Transformation at the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, or as we call it, CIArb. CIArb is essentially a legal organization that focuses on avoiding taking cases to court. So they work to arbitrate, mediate, or adjudicate on behalf of clients before taking it to court, because most people can settle inside the court. So that's who I work for at the moment. But I've been in technology for a long time. I'm 62 next month, and I've been in technology, actually I think it's at 17, but actually 16 and a half is when I first joined the Air Force as a young guy. And I've been, at that time it was called telecommunications. And it's gone through many iterations, and now we've I've covered up many big organizations in my career, not least of all, 15 years at Cisco Systems, where I spent a lot of time commuting back and forward to Silicon Valley, but a wonderful, wonderful company to work for.
Yeah, a very colourful career, I think, that you've had. And we met initially, I think, about 10 years ago now, and we've had relationships through 3 different organizations when we're in that time. What I've noticed from, so just to clarify, we've done work together where I've been in an agency capacity for the organizations that you're working with.
Yep.
And there's been variety in the nature of those relationships. So more recently, you seem to have honed in on the membership sector specifically.
Yes.
So how did, was that a conscious choice, or was that coincidental?
It wasn't a conscious choice, but when we first met, I was CIO at the University of the West of Scotland.
Yeah.
And I had been, previous to that, I had been working with Cisco right up to the 2012 Olympic Games.
Yeah.
And it was a massive undertaking. I then went to work for the University of the West of Scotland, again, another massive undertaking. And after about 2 years or so, I decided that I wanted to take a sabbatical and think about what I was going to do. So I went and toured the southern states of America for 6 months and enjoyed a lot of the music scene and fun with my family and my wife and the kids. We just had a wonderful time. And when I came back, there was a job opening at CIArb, the Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. And that got me into the membership sector. So it was a wonderful introduction. It was something I hadn't done before. And I felt it was at a time in my career where I was given something back. Right? It wasn't such a high roller job at Cisco.
Yeah.
Certainly wasn't as well paid. But it was wonderful to be part of something that was basically about saving people's lives in the workplace.
Yeah.
So that got me hooked into doing it. And then more recently, working for the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, and where again, they all around the world, they're working to keep cases away from court, which can take forever and a day, and trying to settle them through basically alternative dispute resolution methods.
Yeah, that's one interesting thing with this. So 2 things I'd say about membership, because we've also over the years stumbled into working pretty much exclusively with membership organizations, and there's a couple of reasons for it, but there's obviously a feel-good factor, because we both worked with American companies that are very money driven, and it's all about making a set of private owners as rich as possible. And then when you work for an organization that has a greater good, not focused on revenue, it certainly does create a different culture. But what else I noticed is, from a technology perspective, my background's in selling CMS solutions before starting this business, and with that, you're selling these software platforms across all sorts of verticals, and you have different levels of implementation and different types of licensing and so on. And what we noticed actually is, from a technological perspective, the most interesting projects that had the potential to demonstrate the breadth of all of these tools and capabilities that we were working with, typically membership organizations, because there's a lot of, it was around the time, in particular when Web 2.0 was becoming quite prominent. The websites became interactive, bi-directional, and there seems to be something that's quite big within that sector. Would you, based on your experience more recently and previously, what would you say, other than the culture and the purpose of the organization, have you noticed any other drastic differences between what you would see in a membership or a vertical or membership organization and any private sector organization?
I think that there's a couple of things, and it's about, for these organizations, membership is the be all and end all, right? The members are the most important thing. And it sounds crazy today. It's not the CIO or the Director General or whatever. It is the members are the most important things, and the members guide you to where they want you to take them.
Yeah.
So in each of the organizations that I've worked for membership, they've also been managed by a royal charter, right? Yeah, they've got both organizations have a royal charter. And I love that, because it makes it really, really clear what the organization is about.
Yeah.
Most of them are educational facilities as well as charitable. And therefore, you got to be aware of the responsibilities from a charitable organization. But building an educational facility for professionals is people who are building a career. And what I've noticed in the membership sector is that many years ago, it was quite clearly non-diverse. It was all male. It was older male who ran the organization. And quite frankly, if I'm being honest, women made the tea, coffee. That was it. And it's completely changed now. When you drive things, Bed Messenger at iOS, for instance, she drove a fantastic program for bringing through female leadership, to the point that when Bev left, there was a succession of female leaders who were perfectly capable of taking over from her.
Yeah.
When I'm working with Catherine Dixon, the Director General at CIArb, EDI of all sorts, basically diversity of all sorts across all of our products, all of the things that we do is very, very important to them. And I would say that's been the major change from an approach. And therefore, a lot of that drives the technology and what you can have in technology and what you can't have,
Okay.
So if you think of something very simple to latch onto, whereas you would have a worldwide global directory of members, for instance.
Yeah.
But what if someone was being domestically abused? And so you couldn't have their picture front and center or telling them what office they're associated to it. So you have to then be more aware, okay, technology has to be more flexible than just take everybody's name and put it in a directory and stick it out there worldwide. So there's little things like that seem trivial, but they all build up into that wonderful experience, that people are beginning to have today in membership organizations.
Yeah, it's like like a higher level of integrity, maybe would be the right word.
That's one way of putting it. And certainly integrity, I would say both organizations I work with high on making sure that there was equality across everything we do, or at least we try our best to make everything and on an equality basis, that it's diversified, across whatever we can. It's not always possible. I've got roles in my organization just now that, I have the managers go out to hire. And it would be ideal if this role was a male, it would be ideal if this role was a female. What tends to happen is the opposite supply for what you think would be, and therefore you just have to, apply those rules of equality and pick the best person for the job. And for me, that's a good thing. But technology is helping us get there.
Okay.
If you look at previously, even go back just 10 years, it'd be very, very difficult to say in an organization that out of your 40,000 members, 15,000 were women, and of those 15,000 women, and then you had so many thousand guys, how many were LGBT, LGBT, and all of the things that go with it, just knowing basic information. Oh, we have so many people of a certain type, of a certain, and how are we treating them? Are we doing the right things? Are we breaking any laws in any different countries? And then in other ways, you've got countries like, we have members all over the world. I think we're in about 50, over 150 different countries. And some of them are not as far advanced as we are in the UK when it comes to things like that. So therefore, what I can do in the UK, I can't readily publish on a website.
Yeah.
On that. And the web technology is getting smarter to help us deal with things like that. And that's when I love, right, the way we're using that technology to make sure we don't accidentally break a local law or offend anyone unintentionally, or just things like that. And I think that technology is really beginning to
challenging, though. It's like a minefield. Did you guys do anything in China out of interest?
Yeah, of course. Everybody wants to do something in China. We're doing something in China, but one, what are you allowed to do?
Yeah.
But the more you invest in China, the more they're open to you. And no, we're never going to be a Cisco and invest the amounts that Cisco used to invest.
Of course.
But the fact that we have membership there is a need for arbitration, mediation, and adjudication there. So yeah, we want to have members there. We want to, grow our membership from being this totally UK-centric thing that it was a few years ago, where 80% and 90% of our members were UK-based.
Yeah.
We're now in 155 plus countries around the world.
Yeah, that's one thing. One key differentiator, I think, with a lot of the membership organizations, some are UK specific, some have got that view above and beyond. I think that does change, does throw in an extra amount of consideration that has to be taken into account when it comes to strategy, but it also opens up a lot more potential revenue, I think, with the nature of the organization.
Absolutely.
Some are restricted and are finite in how many members they have.
Absolutely. And even down to things like, if we want to grow our business in Kenya, we can't grow it at the same price point as we grow it in the UK.
Yeah.
Therefore, we need to use technology. We need to use a website to differentiate when people select, what country they're in and where they're based, etc. That needs to automatically work. Our front-end website needs to automatically work with a CRM, for instance, to make sure that we get the right prices being fed up at the right time so that people can pay the appropriate price for that particular country.
Yeah. So it's about affordability for the individual. It's a bit like the Big Mac index, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you think around the world, everybody has the same dreams, right?
Yeah.
People in our current industry they want to be the next KC. They want to be the next big thing, and like everyone else. And to get there, you have to go through a series of training and personal development, as well as your previous training. So we try and provide that in an equal footing all around the globe. And we're beginning to see more and more positivity around that.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but based on my own personal experience of being an immigrant into the UK as a child, I imagine what you class as an equal footing and an equal level is going to have so much more impact in, I don't know, a place like Kenya and some of these other developing countries than it will in the UK, because in the UK you're so spoiled with choice and availability and access to.
Yeah, I think you probably hit the nail on the head. If you having worked for a wonderful company like Cisco, didn't matter where you were from, who you were, what color of skin you were, what religion you supported, or whatever. Everyone was a technician of some kind.
Yeah.
You're either in the project management side of things, you're an engineer. And they just put teams together.
Yeah.
And I've sat working in teams with Israelis and Palestinians, for instance. But that doesn't get any tougher than that.
Were you the mediator in the middle of that?
The particular case I remember is these two guys, you would never know there was any issue at all in the world. And that's often where I think if we can just take the people out of the politics and have them work together, particularly in an industry like IT, because data is data. Ones and zeros are ones and zeros no matter which country in the world you're in. And for me, that is where we need to focus our energies on building teams around the world globally. And I hope that through the years, if we can make the same progress in the next 10 years as we have done in the last 15 years, we'll be doing really, really well in that aspect, I think.
Yeah, very interesting times. I mean, especially now post, I don't want to mention the pandemic, but we've over the past 5 years seem to have got into a phase where remote working has become accepted. Location actually means very little. We've had a lot of changes in the day-to-day working habits. But I don't want to digress from our topic. Going back to very interestingly, you've gone through private sector, these big global players, and then you've done a university, and then membership. And I think that the university was like a very, very relevant, almost transitional experience, because I think there's a lot of similarity between what universities are doing. Almost students are like members, the alumni, like members, right?
100%. I remember sharing a conversation with Professor Craig Mahoney back at the university. He was a principal, and I worked for him. He hired me employed, and we were quite close. I understood very quickly what he needed to happen at the university, and the two of us got on very well. And funnily enough, he's down in London now. He's the principal at the University of Law in London now. So
okay.
which is quite ironic, So when I was working with Craig, and that's exactly what he said to me. He said, "I want the students to be at the centre of everything we do."
Uh-huh.
And that was exactly the same as a membership organization. And I remember I did a very simple exercise with students. I went to a couple of different universities and our own university, and I just walked around and I would see groups of students, and I used to ask them, what would be the most useful thing that I could provide for you as the Chief Information Officer of the university? And the surprising thing that they came back to me, of all the wonderful technology we were providing and all of it, and what they wanted most was hundreds of USB points so they could charge their phones and and that was the thing that made the difference. And I took a corridor at the University of West of Scotland, and I just completely made it for the students, where they could get. It was the most used corridor in the university, because people would come, get a cup of coffee, sit, charge the phone up, and we could trace it back by looking at the CCTV before and then after, and the usage was amazing. And we did nothing but where you had a power socket, take that off and put USB sockets on there as well.
I remember that corridor. I think you walked us down that corridor at some point. But what was, so from the first time I met you, you were brought in as this very, let's say, influential, seasoned, high-level professional being brought in that's been given almost a blanket remit, so to speak, and to digitally transform the organization. So that digital transformation, I think it's around that time that became the ultimate focus. You kind of seem to have honed in onto your expertise or specialty, should we say? Was that correct assumption? Or
and I think it's very much so. In the very first senior staff meeting I attended, when I walked into the room, you had Craig was the chair. There was about 15 professors of everything from space to whatever, and they all walked in with these huge piles of papers, and I'm looking at them and I'm like, what's? And this really was for that meeting. They were going through it. They'd all shared all these papers, and it was like you just couldn't manage that amount of papers in a normal industry, but obviously in education they do it. And I said to Craig, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get everyone an iPad Pro, because that's ridiculous, So first stage of digitization, well, let's get all our documents digitized, So reasonable. But the next meeting, they came in with the same pile of papers and the iPad Pro sitting on top of them. Okay, where this is going to be harder than I thought, But once we started going through the discussions and show them how things like the cloud was beginning to evolve, show them how they could put documents and access them both on-site and off-site. And as long as they had a good reader like an iPad Pro, they could really use any device and read the papers as they would, and they could mark them up in the nice bit of software. And slowly but surely we began to change that digital transformation. And if you think about what the kids expect, my grandchildren and my eldest grandson, who's now about to turn 17, he now mentors me. And because they can do things instantly that it took us a while to learn to do. And that's the evolution. So if you're in education, it's not about what you think or your pedagogy of what you've done for the last 40 years. It's going to be an evolving pedagogical approach that says, okay, how are the students? How did they want to learn?
Not what you're comfortable with, or was the next generation.
Exactly, 100%. And that kind of started me on that journey of really moving from a complete paper-based industry, photocopying and said, I can't imagine what you use a photocopier for these days. The fax machine, do you remember them?
I do.
And that wasn't so long ago. That was a way of purchasing for education at the back, was you fax the supplier.
Yep.
And you go, like that's ludicrous now. But we did it. And now it's very difficult to find orders from the past that you say, that's why I did that, that's why I did this. But now, in the digital transformation age, moving away from paper, moving everything more onto logical systems, and then having great facilities for searching. Actually being able to go onto your website and search for anything, finding anything that maybe you did 7-8 years ago, but that's the one, I need that. And this is where I think the evolution is coming and will continue to come. If you look at the futures, AI is here whether we like it or not. And, you can look at ChatGPT or GPT-4 from Microsoft. The thought of that from an educational perspective and from a membership perspective is going to throw up things we never had 2 years ago, problems we never had.
Problems and opportunities, right?
That's exactly it. So how can we take advantage of it, but how can we prevent it being misused to pass exams, to do, because all the answers, right? If you can ask it to tell you all the answers to passing the British Law bar exam.
Yeah, well, we had to pick it up with one of our internal colleagues because he all of a sudden became really active as a thought leader on social media. But we could tell that something doesn't fit here, and we realized that he was getting the algorithm to create posts to make him sound more knowledgeable.
Yeah. And in the GPT-4 version, you can actually get it to help you personalize it so that it's unique, so that what someone was walking me through some of the things it can do, and that you can fling 10,000 words at it and say, make me a hit musical in the tune of in the theme of whoever, Elton John or whatever, but it needs to be very unique.
Yeah, it's interesting times. Do you think, clearly there's a future for AI in membership, but what I seem to, based on my experience of working with membership organizations, more often than not, the membership sector seems to be more in a catch-up mode to, let's say, if the bar is if the private sector is bar, it's always below, trying to catch up and get to a point where they can do the basics comparatively. So I do believe that there's huge potential for AI within the particular sector, but I feel that there's usually cultural elements within these organizations, and again, you correct me if I'm wrong, that there's something inherent within the nature of these organizations that seems to mean that results in, on average, these organizations always being in a bit of a catch-up mode. Is that an unfair assessment?
Sure. I don't think it was an unfair assessment, and certainly in organizations that I work in, I try and change that at the point of transformation. What I mean by that is, the old adage in IT, right? Under promise and over deliver.
Yeah.
Right? Well, we just take that to a practice. We try and say, now, as we transform, this is what you're going to get. This is going to be your baseline. You'll get all of these features and add-ons, etc. And that's your foundation. And then you think through and build on and apply. Mm-hmm. But in actual fact, what we try and do is give them 3, 4, 5 steps up from where they were before, and deliver so that they are not following that in their industry, in their area, they've actually gone from being behind to leading.
Yeah.
And then they're evolving from there. And once, what I've discovered is, once you give staff new technology and you show them how to use it and you show them how they can benefit from it as a group, all of a sudden, the users get very, very innovative. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, if we can do that, wouldn't it be good if we could take that from over there and just move it over there whenever these conditions are? That's it. Perfect. Now you're getting it. And it completely transforms business process. Okay. Technology is only half the answer.
Yeah.
The other half is, in one example in the organization that I work with now, there's one area where I looked at the processes and it was 27 steps long. It's now 2. Mm-hmm. And in any industry, doesn't matter what it is, that is a massive productivity gain. Because every organization is always understaffed. And if you can make those productivity gains, guess what? It frees the staff up to go do the things that everybody couldn't do before because they never had enough staff to do. And therefore it evolves itself, So I think the actual act of transformation is not just about looking at the technology. In fact, I would say if you just did that, you would fail. because that way you're fitting business into whatever the technology can do.
Yeah.
Our approach is definitely about understanding what the business is, what the inputs are, and what the outputs they need, and then automating the life out of everything in between. And that's where you get your transformation.
Yeah, very, very interesting topic. That a very interesting explanation of it, because I'm due to do some presentation on digital transformation. And in my preparation for it, I asked myself, well, how would we actually define digital transformation, right? You know, there's so many variants and shades of it, but so I'm going to ask you, if you had to describe digital transformation in a single sentence, how would you describe it?
Adapting business process to what it should always have been.
Okay.
So it's when I was with Cisco at the Olympics, right? We had this one great statement that was through everything we did at the Cisco House and during the Olympics, and it was, it's not the technology itself that's important. It's what the technology enables.
Yeah.
And that, if you're looking for a sentence to sum it up from the technology side, that is definitely one that I would use. But actually, what you're looking at is you're sorting out stuff that should have been fixed years ago. Right? But it hasn't for a number of reasons, right? People didn't have budget. People did, right? It wasn't important to have digital. Then all of a sudden we had a massive pandemic, and all of a sudden everybody realized, well, if this stuff isn't online, we can't collaborate as easily as we could have if it wasn't online.
Yeah.
And then they started to move, and therefore there was that mobilization. That was the burning platform that it needed to really move. But for me, digital transformation is simply about, it's really business process re-engineering, just using the tools of digital to be able to enable it. So that's my kind of short form review of it, I feel.
And it shows your let's say mastery of the subject, that answer, because one of the frustrations I have in we're working with lots of different organizations, but in particular within the membership sector, everybody that I speak to is at some point of digital transformation. And personally, I think the digital transformation is something that doesn't have a beginning and an end. It has different phases of middle, right?
Yep.
And I really like your explanation of the way things should have always been. But what I'm seeing a lot of, first of all, organizations not knowing where to start, and a lot of piecemeal of let's update this and let's update that, and just hope that it's all going to plug in and work without any kind of finality vision. But even more frustratingly, what I'm seeing is organizations using technology to reinforce the processes that have already got in place, rather than taking an opportunity to re-engineer the processes.
Yeah, 100%. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Is normally the investment in someone like a very senior IT director or a CIO is not something certain companies think about, or certain organizations, companies may be the wrong. If you look at membership organizations, they normally have very small staffs and huge memberships, right? But they're still going to be managed, and in fact, those are the people who should be bringing in consultants for periods of time, fixing what's wrong, and then having the consultant step away again and come back in when it's appropriate. I've learned over the years that I love doing the strategic bit. The conversations that we're having here, but doing that matter-of-factly from an organization's, here's what you've got, here's what you want, and here's the 5 steps you need to take in between types to do it. And that's really, really important. But the first thing I do if they ask me to go ahead and do that is I go out and I either take on as a consultant, or I hire someone who knows the detailed bits and bytes of every bit of technology I'm about to talk about and put in it. Because I'm not the guy if you want me to sit down and develop code and write automation and do that. Keep writing automation, getting easier now. Yeah, I probably can do automation now, but the fact is that's not going to be me. So what I'm getting at is that you need to have a team that really understands where you're going. Mm-hmm. Because I think it's easy enough to paint the end vision. Yeah. And it's easy enough to state where you are and then draw that. And I like to work in 6-month semesters. So if it's going to take me 3.5 years or 3 years to get to there, then each 6-month semester to know that I'm on target, I should be putting things on the board that says, by 6 months we'll do these things. And some things will take the full 2 and 3 years to do. So in that case, to keep everybody interested and on board, you have to look at what quick wins can I do in the first 6 months.
Yeah.
Then what slightly longer quick wins can I deliver in 12 months? Because if you're going to keep people waiting from the day you start to 3 years, you're never going to be successful. People will give up well long before the line. So you have to give them wins along the way that they can say, right, we know where we're going. We can begin to see the development happen. And these can be little things that, it's maybe taking on a bit of technology that does electronic board papers, for instance. Where instead of sending out, you get 27 board members and you send out 27 packs every time there's going to be a board meeting. Why not just put it in the one place centrally and tell everybody to log in and to work from there? Yeah. And once people get it, once the penny drops, then they become your biggest advocate. They're like, oh, no, we've got to get more of that, right? That saves us so many hours every month, how often they're having the board meetings or directors meetings or
So yeah, I mean, what you're talking about there is organizational change management, right?
But working with them right through it and making sure that everybody understands what digital transformation is going to mean for them for the next 3 years. And although you paint that picture, there's nothing stopping every year as evolving it to, I said after 12 months we'd be here, but actually we're going to do that a little bit faster because next year we want to do these other 3 things. Yeah. Whilst you're still doing the long-term things that have to be done.
And 3 years seems to be almost like a favorite. I mean, we do it as well. When we talk to organizations, we say, well, we want to understand where you want to be we say 3 or 3 to 5 years down the line, and then we'll talk about what you need right now. Why is 3 the magic number?
So I'll tell you why I think it's a magic number. Because people say you either need to have a 3 or a 5 year plan.
Yeah.
Right? I think from a strategic perspective, 5 years is great. If you're keeping it at that high level, you can have a 5 year plan. That's fine. But look at how quickly in the last year something like GPT has come along.
Yeah.
Right? So for me, when you're doing these major transformations, you've got about a year of planning, a year of procuring, securing, and mostly now it's configuration rather than development. You're in there. And then you got about a year of testing and training and getting people to follow the lead. So the 3 years kind of works in those 3.
So planning, doing...
Yeah, planning, doing, and...
onboarding.
Basically. Onboarding, resolving issues, but mostly it's around training, teaching people. Now you've got this wonderful new technology, you were using it for 10% of its capability before we delivered the new stuff. Straight away, we got you up to 35% of its capability.
Yeah.
And then it's about closing that gap between the 35% and nobody will ever do 100%, but you probably get a mere 70% utilization of the new technologies. And that's a pretty good thing.
That sounds like a very good utilization. Well, one of the frustrations you see a lot is organizations go through this. They almost see these transformational projects like events rather than processes, and see them come to an end. Oh, we've launched now, and then that's it. Hope that it works without that hand holding for the users and that
constant monitoring and ensuring that it's actually being used.
It's a phrase we use all the time. Change is not an event, right?
Yeah.
It's a journey.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. There's going to be several stopping off points along the way, you know. It's just the first one will be a big one. And the second one will be big, but slightly less than the first. And the third one, again, will be big, but slightly less than the second, and so on. Until you're in a phase where I like to move pretty quickly into things like either quarterly or half-yearly release cycles. So instead of IT being interrupted because Joe wants a yellow button instead of a red button and all this sort of stuff, you store all that up and do it as a single release. So instead of going to your vendor, because it's more cost effective for them and for you if you can package work up and say, right, here's on our website, here's the 8, 9, 10 things we need done. So we'll do it at the end of the quarter. And if there's any more small things come in that time, we'll add that to there. And then there's a cut-off date. The partner who's doing it will go away, deliver it, come back. Then we do the whole thing again. UAT it, test it, great, back goes out. But it's this continuous cycle of innovation from the users.
Yeah.
A lot of people, when I talk to them at various conferences and stuff like that, is they'll talk about innovation coming from IT. The best innovation I ever come across comes from the members of staff who are working in the front line or from members themselves. You say, I was in such and such a place, and I saw this great thing, and this is what it did.
Yeah.
And you go, okay, I understand that. Tell me a little bit more about that. And you get a few to go away, build a prototype to what was that type of thing you need. And then go away and, as I said, this under promise, over delivering. Keep working those cycles, do quarterly releases, continuing to upgrade. If you look at the websites and the intranets and stuff like that, there's many, many tools coming out now that we can take advantage of that's going to make those so much better. For instance, 90% of our stuff is all in English. And we're doing a lot more business in Saudi Arabia. Or not just Saudi, but in Asia in general. So I might need 2 or 3 languages that need to be translated in a natural way. And I can go and find a professor or something to do that, or I can go and find some grad students to do that. Or I can use emerging AI technology that will just do it instantly and do it in a natural way now. So we got to be ready as I would say, as the technological leaders of any organization. Be ready to adapt change as it comes. You might not always get it right first time, but I'm pretty sure second or third you will. And that moves you on hugely.
How do you make sure you're not finding a need for the sake of technology rather than solving a problem?
Because if you go back to that, the way that we do it just now, if you go back to what I said, you take your lead from the business. So what we do is we work on a backlog situation. You've probably done that with your development teams. They work on backlogs. Well,
too many.
We've just adapted. We've just adapted that from a business perspective. If someone from the business comes and says, "Oh, it'd be a great idea if we had this, it'd be a great idea if we had that," and what we do is we use tools like DevOps, or some people use Jira. We just have to DevOps, and what we do is we list all those business requirements, and then we will sit down with our director team and say, this is all the things your staff have asked for. We've prioritized and sequenced them the way that we think you might want it. But you tell us if that's the right way. And the budget and the headcount finishes at a certain point. Say, right, that's the next release. That's what goes into it. So you drive that from the business all the time. And then when you need something else to be part of the solution, it becomes obvious, because if you find 2, 3, 4 things are blocked because we don't have anything that does this thing, like get it, But it's always got to be driven by the business. If it's driven by technology, And the only exception I make to that rule, there's two exceptions where technology, I feel, should lead all the time. And cyber is one area, and things like GDPR and stuff like that is the other. So between us and the governance teams, we should lead that. But everything else, technology-wise, should always be driven by the business.
Yeah, solve a problem that
Yeah,
exists.
exactly. Exactly.
So, on that point, what do you think are going to be, moving forward, what do you think are going to be the next, within membership sector specifically, top 3 trends for the year ahead? If I had to pick something that's clickbait.
For the year ahead, I've spoken about one quite openly.
Yeah.
And that is that's the AI, and how, because most membership organizations are either a charity or an educational organization as well as being a fundamental membership. So everybody's going to be looking at as Microsoft rules these, because Microsoft are building it into our everyday life. I don't know if they've already started with something called Copilot that helps you with all your cover automate stuff. So if you're a huge Microsoft user, and Google are going to do the same on the other side, and then, I've no doubt Amazon will come up with something, etc. We have to work out what we're going to do with these things and how we're going to use them to best effect. And that'll need to happen quickly. I didn't realize how quickly it was going to need to happen until the last 6 months. And now I'm going, we're really going to look at some of this stuff seriously, and how are we going to develop some of our products and prevent people from
Abusing.
cheating. Yeah, exactly. But also to make it easier for people to study, and using the power of it to get them to the right things when they need to learn about a topic, instead of getting them there instantly, rather than having to flick through pages and pages of books, or anything that's written down, where you can type something and ask a question, or go here, watch this video, do this thing, and we can take advantage of that. The second thing I think that will continue as a trend is, I think Monday to Friday 9 to 5 has totally gone, not just from the membership, but I'm talking about general work, right? There'll be very few people work that way. So to make the most of technology in helping us have a flexible workplace environment, we are doing all sorts of different things just now to see what the best thing is. For instance, we're only asking people to come in 1 day a week.
Yeah.
So that we're spending some time in the office. We try and coordinate that those days are with the people that you need to work with most, etc. We're doing things like My Time, where, depending on who you are and what you do, every month you can take up to 1 day off, but you might want to take 2 half days, maybe to cover a babysit situation or whatever. But it's your time, we don't care. And then when you're working, you're solidly in, you're working, you're delivering. And all these little things will add up. So I think there's the trend in both from a technological perspective and an organizational perspective about the flexible working environment. And then the one I think that we've still to master, that we're almost there, but never quite yet there for me, is mobile. Where you've got great mobile phones, you've got great tablets, but everybody still reverts back to laptop.
Okay. And you mean everybody within the organization working, or the audience and the members?
Yeah. So I think both, right? And it's only because they don't trust their tablet enough to be able to work on it. But to your point, when we discussed earlier on about cloud now becoming so much better than it was even 5 years ago, it's now completely reliable. You can log on from almost anywhere. It's gigabit speed now, so those speed's not an issue any longer. And devices have to catch up. The fact that I still carry a laptop about with me, to me as a technologist, embarrasses me. I just want to carry a tablet and do anything I want from it.
interestingly, a couple of years ago, we actually partnered with a US company that's focusing on voice and AI specifically.
Yeah.
Right. And what we've been doing is a bit of research on, what we tried to create a vision on, okay, so here's a technology that we, two hugely advancing areas of technology, voice and our AI. Some great examples, but they'd never use that technology in a digital user journey example. So we partnered with them, have been doing some proof of concepts internally and actually looking for a membership partner to kind of be our alpha implementation of this, so to speak. Because you just know that somehow these technologies, the vision that I had was, well, surely, membership organizations have been providing a lot of online training. They're servicing typically non-technical users of various profiles. Why do they need to look and click when they could theoretically have a conversation with the membership portal and talk their way through the exams, ask for the information, and effectively like an Alexa for your own.
Yeah.
But the challenge that we've had is everybody's interested, but they want to see somebody else do it first. So this, I believe, is a strength and a weakness in the membership sector.
Yeah.
Where the beauty of it is the one vertical where everybody learns from everybody else because there's very few competitors, but at the same time, it's almost a little bit like public sector in the sense of everybody likes to keep it a bit safe. Nobody wants to truly be a leader.
I visualize the problem slightly differently than that, and simply because of the sort of Silicon Valley approach. So during my Cisco days, we brought some really, really good people to Cisco, and we focused on why some technologies fail and some don't. And it's called crossing the chasm. I think, if I remember correctly, I think Jeffrey Moore might have been the author of the book, but this model is called crossing the chasm.
Okay, yeah.
And if you think back in history, right? So you had VHS and Betamax.
Yeah.
Betamax was probably the better technology, but VHS was the most popular. It was more simple to use. It was really easy, and it was cheaper and more readily available.
Yeah.
That crossed the chasm. Betamax failed. You never had.
Yeah. It won the race.
So in the crossing chasm, a more recent event is obviously Blu-ray and HD.
Yeah.
So HD was the better technology, but Blu-ray was owned by Sony, and Sony had millions of marketing dollars, and therefore Blu-ray won the race out of the pack.
Yeah.
When you think about new technology, the hardest thing to do is to get it across the chasm.
Yeah.
What's going to be the spark that takes it across there?
Yeah.
And when you're talking about, like you are talking here, about new ways of doing things, you need to try and identify what's the burning platform that would make this really work. And for membership, for me, one of the key attributes could be talking to the website to look up people's profiles, directory entries.
Okay.
And potentially even changing that directory entry. Right.
As in people searching for other people.
People searching for themselves, searching for you. Just okay, look up my profile, sign me on. Right, you'll probably be single sign on anyway. You look through that and change my profile from my old address of blah 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 to my new address of, or my secondary email on. So things that folks are doing other stuff, you can just get on with doing. And starting simple, right? You need or bring me up a Cherie Blair.
Yeah.
Bring me up her. She's a member in our organization, right? But her, you can imagine, because she has her, a lot of what she does will be well protected.
Yeah.
But she's a member of the organization, so she'll be in there. She'll be there, and you will want to look up. I want to see the profile of the chairman of the board. I want to, somebody's being proposed to go on as board of trustees. So you want to go look them up and so on. But I think there's also, I don't think using voice to do things on the web is necessarily new, because if you look at the accessibility software, it's been doing it for years.
Okay, yeah.
But that's for a group of people who have some sort of, some sort of, I wouldn't say disability, but likely that they've got some feature that's a disability to that. What we got to find is what is going to make that the useful thing that people will go, I can use that. I can use it.
Yeah, but typically, like with other things, we jump on bandwagons, right?
Yeah.
And where that thought came from is the prominence of Alexa and the Siri, and the fact that you've been in technology a long time. You'll know that I always find it fascinating how, for example, if we talk about content management, right? Content management started just as content management, divorcing the content from the presentation layer. Simple as that, and make that as, focus on integrity of content, and that's it, structuring that content in the right way. That was pretty easy to achieve. And has achieved it very quickly. And then how do you differentiate? So then he'll start adding, all these different features and, all this out-of-the-box functionality, whereby now the content management system is not just a content management system, it's your development tool as well. It's now your foundation for everything you have. It's your marketing automation, it's your analytics, it's everything. And now we've come to a point where, boom, you know what? Let's scrap all of that and go back to headless, which is back to the basics. And what's enabled that, I mean, I'm really summarizing here, but what's enabled that again has been SaaS licensing and cloud, right? Because, we've now got to a full circle where actually now all vendors want to go on a SaaS licensing model because it increases the value of their organizations, and cloud computing has made it, affordable and possible to move towards perpetual license models, things like that. So it's with technology, it's usually advancement in other technologies that then, once they all reach a certain level, that then create an exponential boost in all of those things coming together.
I absolutely do. When I was listening to you speaking there, it reminded me of a statement an old boss of mine used to make all the time. And it was, in technology, there's three things you can do. You can lead, you can follow, or you can get out the way. Right? And you got to decide which one of them you're going to be.
Yeah.
Right? And when it's new stuff, when it's evolving stuff, you really have to decide, right, am I in this for the long haul and to make it work? And if you are, then you become the leader. When you go to the conferences, when you go to the thing, you got to be forcing your story for everybody to listen to and to follow, and then you'll begin to get help. Then you'll begin to get people signing up. But what you're trying to do, I mean, just as you were speaking, I was thinking about web content, right? And how productivity-wise, it's adjusting web content takes an inordinate amount of time that actually, if you had a voice tool that could say, paragraph 3 of this article, change it from reading such and such and such a thing to reading this, go do it now, and go off and actually just using your voice to change content.
To control the software.
Instead of click, typing, for everything, we can speak much faster than we can type.
Yeah.
And I used to be able to type at 75 words a minute, right? Couldn't any longer, but I can certainly talk at 75 working, So I think you gotta think about these elements, right? How could it be useful? What are the quick? Going back to that thing I was saying, with long term, we wanted to do these things, but what are the quick wins we could do just now that people would go, oh, this is going to be really useful, and they buy into the journey, not into the event, and that is where I think a lot of good ideas falter, because it's almost set up as a conversation that's around an event. You buy into this and you do this and you'll be successful in this area. it's there's not many people who buy into that conversation. But if you can paint the picture, 3 years down the line, and say coming back from that, this is the likely development paths for these things. That people can follow, people can buy, and that's after you've gone through the first 1 or 2 or 3 stages, then people they'll either have bought in or told you why they're not buying in for you to go and adjust it and then take it from there.
Very interesting perspective on it. And, I think in all these 10 years, Jim, I think every time we've met, I've learned something. I walked away a little bit wise after a conversation with you. As I mentioned, I could talk until tomorrow, and I think we should come back and do this again at some point in the future. But thank you.
Not at all. I'd be more than happy to. And just shows every time I talk to technologists like yourself, I always walk away with something. And that's that's the way the industry should work. So thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me. I've enjoyed it tremendously, and I've enjoyed the conversation. Thanks.
Absolutely. And I look forward to a lot more, many more years of working with you, wherever that may take it. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.